And welcome to our Vortex Healing Centre podcast. And today we have the wonderful Bonnie Armstrong, who wrote this incredible book called An Apparently Normal Person. Now, Bonnie is anything but an apparently normal person. There's nothing normal about her. She's had this incredible mental disorder that's called a dissociative disease. Disorder, sorry.
Right. Dissociative disorder.
That's
what it's called.
Yeah. And that means there's dual personalities or more than dual personalities inside a body. Now, this happens quite often, and especially with people who've had very, very traumatic childhood. Now, Bonnie does fit into that, but that's not Bonnie's story. Bonnie's story is how she turned her disorder into a healing and how she became the beautiful spiritual being that she is today. So, Bonnie, would you like to tell us a little bit about your journey?
I'd be happy to. And one thing that Sue didn't mention is that we're actually sitting at her Vortex Healing Center in Tasmania, Australia. And I feel immensely honored and blessed to be here in this energy. It is a very healing place, and you're a very healing human. So thank you. I grew up in a very normal kind of 50s household, 50s and 60s. I had a lovely life. I married and had a great career, 2 children. I had I had lived in several countries and spoke several languages by the time I was 20. So a very blessed life in many, many ways. Um, and apparently normal. I I my inner system had convinced even me that I was just fine, thank you. Until I turned 50. And in my 50s, my body started falling apart, and no one could diagnose what was going on. But my legs became weak, my mind became weak, my um, uh, I would have these attacks that created dyslexia and mind fog. And anyway, by the time 6 years had gone by, I was in a wheelchair, not able to walk more than a couple of feet by myself. And a neurologist tested me, thinking maybe it was an atypical seizure disorder that I was having, and found that there was no abnormal electrical activity in my brain. There was no medical uh, cause for whatever was going on with me, and asked me the question, had there been any trauma in my childhood? And I said, no, I didn't ever fall. I never hit my head. I didn't. And she says, no, well, it could be not just physical trauma, but emotional trauma. Was there anything like, oh, no, I had a great childhood. Thank you very much. Oh, well, there was that one time when I was 12 and I tried to kill myself, but that was just a silly prank and we gave it no attention. And she looked at me and she said, no, it's not a silly prank. If you'll go back and find out what was bothering that 12-year-old, you'll find what's causing this mystery illness. And I thought she was the nutty one. I said, that can't be. But that was exactly the right diagnosis and the right shift in treatment. And I began working with a very talented and wonderful therapist, and who I call Julia in the book. And we uncovered the fact that my body was ready to release a lot of memories that it had kept hidden from me all those 50 years, about things that happened in my childhood. And the people, the individual entities in my system, in my psyche, that had held all those secrets all those years and never let me know anything about them, and allowed me, and this is why I call it a superpower, they allowed me to live a wonderful life. I worked for two governors. I broke a glass ceiling in one of the governor's offices. I worked with President Carter. I had a consulting practice that covered the United States on children and family issues. It was a really productive life that was full of love and two, as I said before, two wonderful children and a big family. Anyway, I learned that the dissociated identities within my psyche had held secret the secrets of my childhood so that I could live that life. It was their intention that I live a good life, that I live a life that was full of doing good for others. And that's what I did. And the healing, oh, you have to ask some questions. I just go on and
I
on.
was just waiting for you to finish.
I'm sorry.
I was going to say, when I read the book, I thought, this is not a disorder. You used to call it multi-personality disorder. This is certainly not what's happening in this woman. This amazing woman did endure an absolutely horrific childhood. And these wonderful alters, they call them, but I call them people. They're actually like people. It's like,
yeah, there we go.
Bonnie is not a person. She's a community. And all these people work together diligently to help
That's
Bonnie
really true.
become who Bonnie is, which is just an amazing being. The stuff that I read in here, I thought, that is unbelievable, but what a wonderful, revolutionary way to look at it. We don't hear of mental illness being taught as a healing modality.
But it surely was in my life. The what they call dissociation, which is when your system just simply can't handle whatever it is that's going on, and you separate from it. And so when my system did that and separated and created all these other people inside, it was to help me survive. So that can't be a disorder if it helped you survive, right? And then as I lived through my adolescence and adulthood until I was 50, they still kept all that stuff hidden from me or as long as I was on the trajectory of doing good in the world. And I don't know why they decided that, but they did. They and we had a great deal of spiritual guidance right from the beginning. Um, and that's why the parts of me inside kept me going and kept me moving forward in a life that would be useful to other people. But the healing process was the really cool thing. Go ahead. You go.
I was just going to say, it's very difficult to hear you say all of this when I know what a horrendous childhood you have endured. And that isn't the point of what we're talking about. It's like making every post a winner. We go for the pure healing. And
Yeah. I was drawn, and I didn't know exactly why. I created a vision board in a workshop one time that said that by next June, I'm going to be at a spiritual retreat in Machu Picchu. And this outer person had no idea that that was an important part of my journey. I was like totally surprised by it. But by that next June, actually by that next March, I was in Cusco at Machu Picchu, and traveling in Peru with Jorge Luis Delgado, who I know you've also worked with, and learning to understand my healing as a part of global healing, to understand my healing as a part of the planet's healing, and that I didn't need to be afraid anymore, that Mother Nature, that the spirit guides around me, that the spirit guides within me, we're all working toward my highest and best good, and that I could learn compassion for the people that hurt me as long as I didn't carry forward their kinds of actions. So as long as I didn't do the things that were done to me, and could learn to have compassion for the pain that the people who hurt me were living with, um, then the spirit guides were very willing to work with me. There's a rainbow.
Rainbow, yes.
Oh, there's a beautiful rainbow just outside the window. Sorry.
Yes, you're saying all this, but you didn't have any memory of it. So basically, that what you're saying is a little bit irrelevant. And I'm just going to say that
Okay.
that there were clues along the way, but you never even looked at them. One,
Yes.
your career.
Oh, yeah,
You worked in child protection.
exactly.
What made you work there?
I had no idea. I had no idea why creating better conditions for children and families was such a passionate part of my career. But until I learned that some protection when I was a child, some help for my mother to get some mental health treatment for the children would have been very helpful. But I didn't know any of that at the time. You're right. Um,
So we can deduce from that you were a naturally very good, kind person anyway,
well,
of a basic high spiritual nature.
well, that's true. And that was aided by all the people inside me who were keeping me moving forward instead of stuck in the past.
Yes, and sort of what got me to, again, reading this book, you got to know the people inside you.
Yeah.
And we could clearly see that they were supporting you and they were helping you and they were the ones that got you through it. You didn't have the strength to face a lot of it on your own, so they blocked it out. And when you were ready, they gradually introduced you to it.
Exactly. That's exactly
So
what happened.
it's certainly not a disorder. It's a helping modality.
And they helped heal me. They helped heal themselves as each one began to understand what had happened to them and how that had impacted the whole. Then they dug in, each one, to bring forward the not so pleasant memories and heal from the traumatic impact that they'd had on my system. And what we learned was that every single one of the symptoms that had put me in a wheelchair, every one of those symptoms that were now coming forward in my body were the remnants of something that had actually happened to me. And so again, that can't be called a disorder. That's simply healing from your history.
So what age did you become aware of the entities?
About 58, 59.
So they held you together all that time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. And you think this is a disorder? This is so amazing. I mean, this is healing at its purest.
It truly is, but I must tell you that I sought out with their guidance, with my internal guidance, I sought out indigenous wisdom. Part of the abuse that I suffered was my grandfather's little religious cult, and it was based in Christianity and left me unable to find solace or support in Christianity, which is what I'd grown up with. And so I really had to seek out other kinds of spiritual support. And I turned to indigenous wisdom for lots of reasons.
Which is how we became friends when we met each other.
That's right. That's right. We met at a wonderful conference at Uluru in
Yes.
Australia.
the wonderful Judy O'Donnell. Thanks, Judy. It was a fantastic event in my life, and it still continues its reverberations till today. And I will share my first impression of Bonnie. She came up and said, "Hi, I'm Bonnie, and I have multiple personalities."
Did I say that?
Yes.
Oh dear.
I
And she said, "Good, which one are you?"
So yeah, no, I was quite intrigued by then, and I always something different. Oh, awesome, let's go and have a talk. So yeah, we became friends, and I mean, often shared a meal, and we went our own ways. And on the conference tour itself, we partook most things, but quite often we found ourselves eating at the restaurant there together, and that was really enjoyable.
It truly was.
Mm.
And the indigenous wisdom there that love is what combines us. The conference was called Reconnecting Gondwana, which is the mega continent that had existed millions of years ago and broke apart. And we were reconnecting, thanks to Judy and others, the truths from all of the countries that have evolved there. And the truth is, as Uncle Bob Randall taught us in a little song, was that love is the thing that connects us, and love is our responsibility. And this was then again reiterated by the Maya when I was studying with them, that it's that the new era will come to pass. Your healing will come to pass when you treat in every interaction with people, with growing things, with nature. If you treat everyone with love and kindness and reduce fear and aggression, in that that the new era will exist. So each one of us has the responsibility. It's not some responsibility for somebody out there. It's our responsibility inside. And every one of my altars takes that very, very seriously. And so together, that's the way we try to live now. Until we're coughing.
I also had a big awakening with the Indigenous culture when I was asked to come and work at the Vortex, and my big task was to find the property, which I did, and then I found there was a whole lot of painful Aboriginal memories here. And my guidance was saying, yes, connecting to the Aboriginal spirits here, it's your job first. Your first big test is to heal the pain here, the Aboriginal pain. And I thought, well, no, I know nothing about Aboriginal pain, and I don't know much about their customs, and I'm certainly not going to mess where I know nothing. So, no, I'm not going to do it. But gradually, I found I was doing it, and as Bonnie's just been saying, it was love that healed. So I've got someone waving at me in the background, and it's quite annoying, actually.
Well, can I take off from there, from what you've just been saying?
Did I finish
I
saying
don't
that
know
I
if you
actually
did.
healed the Aboriginal pain by loving the property?
By loving the property. Yeah.
And the more I loved it, the bigger the ley line grew, and the more I loved my life, the bigger I grew.
Yeah.
And I grew in tandem with the ley line.
Yeah.
So yeah, it has been a wonderful journey, but if I hadn't have loved it, I would have failed.
Yeah.
Mm.
It sounds simple, but it is so profound. It's so profound. Another lesson that was really helpful to me, because it's easy when you learn that you've been mistreated, especially as a child, it's easy to get really angry with people. And I will admit that I spent some time in that space. But again, back to Peru, the elders there were praying for their ancestors back 12 generations and for healing. And I thought, oh, good, I can help. I'll help pray for your ancestors back 12 generations. And they looked, no, honey, you got to do your work. We're going to do our work. You do your work. And I'm like, I'm not praying for my ancestors back then. They, given what they did to me. And the lesson there was to have compassion because we don't know what happened to them. We don't know why they did what they did. Well, I don't know even why my ancestors were colonizing and committing genocide on their ancestors as they were in North America. But what I do know is that they taught me that all of that results in and comes out of soul wounds on the part of both the perpetrator and the victim, and that it is that pain that we're trying to heal. It doesn't have to, we're not talking about what's good and what's bad. What we're talking about is compassion for the experiences of people who then do hurtful things. And if we can create that compassion, then we can have compassion for ourselves too, which is absolutely necessary to healing. And so that was really helpful because I just wanted to be angry, and that wasn't going to help anybody. And so the indigenous wisdom was not saying this they are evil. That's not what they said. They didn't even call them perpetrators. They said they're people with soul wounds, and you've got the job of assisting to heal those soul wounds down through the family, and so that we can break the cycle now in this generation. And I think we have.
Mm. Okay, so Bonnie, we come now to the essential healing part of you and the role that your altars played.
Mm,
I would love to hear a bit more about that if you can share some.
mm. It's the most fascinating thing I think I've ever experienced in my life is working with them through this healing process. Each one, uh, as you can imagine, each one had their own jobs. And I was a polyfragmented system, which means that each of my altars um, used lots of other parts, smaller parts, to survive what was going on in our childhood. So they were very busy. And they were multiples themselves. And so the first part of the healing process was each of them learning, drawing back together their story and all the parts that helped them survive what they were what they did, so that we could then put together the story of what happened to this body as a child. And in that process, they used all their skills and learned then, and as their story became full, then they could learn that they didn't need to hold on to all that stuff anymore, that they could let that go, and maybe they could use their skills in some new ways. And so as each of them healed, as each of them got clarity about their own story and healed from the remnants of it, they were then able to help everybody else heal. And so Purple Lady Purple Lady, who is one of my more spiritual internal community. She started a circle around a golden candle um, of where they could communicate with each other and decide what needed to happen next and help each other figure things out, help each other solve conundrums that were confusing to everybody, and learn and take what we were learning from the lessons learned from healing communities that we involved ourselves with outside, take those lessons and use them inside. So again, the altars themselves, George, they were part of the healing process. They were in many ways the healers. Listening, learning from what we were learning outside, help with great help from our therapist, who was awesome. And then taking their skills and using them in new ways. So George, who had been a really great protector, one of a couple of masculine internal people that I have, he decided that helping us write out the story was going to be important because it helped us heal as we wrote. And so he took on the job of coordinating everybody writing their story. And that's what eventually ended up in this book. Purple Lady learned the spiritual lessons and made sure that we continued with our own spiritual rituals at home, so that body, mind, spirit were all healing at the same time. Priestess is very rigorous intellectually, and insisted on truth, insisted on us being clear about what our truth is and speaking it clearly. Um, and there's this wonderful moment in the book where in Peru, she was communicated with by an Inca priestess, one of the most important Inca priestesses. We sat at her gravesite, and she and priestess actually communicated, um, and and gave priestess a whole new lease on life, that she could actually find her own power and her own truth, and then help me and the rest of us find our own power and find our own truth. And that came to us through the indigenous wisdom at Machu Picchu. So everybody had a role to play in the healing. Let's not please forget BJ, who who had spent so much time trying to keep us looking normal on the outside. And she was quite a chameleon, and was able to be whatever was needed in the moment. And then was able to sit back and let the others take over some of the healing process while she rested for the first time in 50 years. So anyway, we are a community, we are a loving family, and we work together to heal, and now also to speak about healing in the biggest possible way possible, because it is all about love. Like we said before, it's all about compassion. It's all about diffusing anger and fear, every chance we have.
And you do that
By being loving. But you know what? The truth is, the first person you have to be loving with is yourself. And with me, that takes on about a dozen folks. And then we all need to be loving with each other. And that's what we've learned. And as we learn it, that we can be loving with ourselves internally, then we can be more loving with everybody out externally. And the truth is that everybody's healing accrues to everybody else's healing. That's true internally for me, and it's true across communities. And I know that that's part of the work that you guys have been doing.
yeah, and we can clearly see that what's gone on inside Bonnie is exactly the same process that we all go through, but with external guides.
Yeah.
And it sounds a lot easier.
Well, it's
Well,
fascinating, and the parallels are amazing.
I know, and it's intrigued me for ever since I first read the book, and I've always wanted to know more, and some of the conversations, my hair was completely straight. It's curly now. So it has been
Sorry.
a fantastic voyage, and it does show that mental illness is not an illness. It's actually a healing path.
Mm.
So we listen and we learn from the things that we're doing and the things we're seeing and the things we're feeling. and we go on our internal guidance. If we go inside,
Yeah.
all the healing's there.
All the healing is there.
Yeah. And we love.
May each of you find your own truth, speak it with love, and exude love in every interaction that you have.
Absolutely couldn't say it better. So I think that's a wrap, and thank you very, very much, Bonnie, for sharing this story. And if you want to know more, this is a fabulous read.
And it's available in ebook and this book printed wherever you find books, and sometime probably at the end of May of 2025 we'll have the audiobook out. So
Apparently normal person.
That's
maybe.
me.
Or it could be from disorder to order.
Exactly.
Yeah. And not causing it or using it as a mental disorder, using it as a healing path.
There is none of my people inside my internal community who want to take on the mantle of being mentally disordered. We are mentally gifted, and that mental gift has offered us survival and a great life and a beautiful healing path. And I am forever appreciative of